Welcome to day 3 of the Housing Transformation Summit. It's a long, hard conference, isn't it? 8 a.m. and late night tours. So thank you all for being here on time. We've got an awesome panel for you here today. You know, remember, I'm an energy consultant, and so when I help architects and builders design more efficient buildings, they often tell me they're not interested in what the buyer can't see, the structure itself. They're more interested in, upgraded mechanical systems and countertops, as you all well know. But these guys are innovating that very thing, the structure itself. And so I think you'll find this panel just eye-opening, like the panelization and modular panel we did the other day. This will be a good continuation of that discussion, and you guys were into that, so I expect you to be into this as well. So let me introduce these two guys who, if I was I grew up collecting baseball cards. If they had home builder cards, these would be the two that I would trade for. I'd trade my William Lyon for either one of you guys, all right? So my job is to shut up and let them talk. Let me let you guys introduce yourselves, all right? Mike, you want to start?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Mike Mancini. I am the president of SoDella Construction. We are a local general contractor focused on building production residential homes in the build-to-rent space. Currently have 250 homes completed, 600 under construction, and over 1,000 in backlog in the Phoenix metro area. Spent a lot of time in the for sale sector, working for some bigger home builders, and now focused solely on the build-to-rent space and trying to make a difference with panelized, off-site manufactured, alternate building material systems in the houses we build.
So good morning, my name is Herro. I'm the EVP of Operations for Bettr Homes. We're a vertically integrated structural insulated panel company designed to displace construction methodology. We formed last year in Tampa, and our intention is obviously to create the potential for the industry to evolve from sticks to panelized construction. And Bettr Homes is a triple net bottom line oriented company. Will build only zero energy homes throughout the country, but will also enable other builders to build zero energy shells. And Mike and I go back a dozen years. We've been beating our heads against what does the industry look like to be relevant in the next 10 years for 12 years now. And luckily it's evolved quite a bit. There's been a lot of positive change that's created opportunities for builders that are interested in challenging the value proposition to buyers. And it looks like that pace of change is going to be continuing rapidly over the next 10 years. And that's what, Mike and I jumped out of the big corporations and into the world of change management to help facilitate that change.
Awesome, and I wasn't even aware that you guys shared that common rootstock at Meritage when we recruited you for this panel, but it's so cool because you guys can razz each other a little extra. So
I know all Mikey's bad stories.
I know more.
And we set up that discussion yesterday with a panel on solar and storage and smart controls too, so the zero net energy discussion. Not a lot of uptake so far yet in this group on solar and storage, by the way. So when we talked about why these guys are innovating, why they're choosing to differentiate with how they build their structures, these were some of the issues in the industry that came up. Labor shortages, skilled labor shortages, supply chain snafus. I don't need to tell you guys, right? So are there any in particular you guys want to highlight that you're struggling with these today and sort of why that led you to change how you build your structures?
Let me do 10,000 and you can bring it down to ground.
Like always.
Like always.
Like
So the buzzword of the day is ESG, right? The environmental, social, governance policies of a corporation and the capital, whether you're publicly traded or private and dependent on investor capital, it's being directed and throttled and prioritized around these ESG metrics. And I think that there's a lot of misconception about how ESG is driving our particular industry. So if you think about ESG is a company is normally focused on their bottom line for profitability. A good company thinks about the people within the organization necessary to maintain that profitability over time. A better company thinks about their social license to operate so that that company continues to be able to be viable within the communities they operate within. And then a great company thinks about the changing regulations and the changing characteristics of their buyers and the changing evolutionary landscape in the marketplace and anticipates those changes so that they're relevant. So I think everything we're going to talk about this morning is positioning your company between those goalposts to continue to be relevant. And so all of these things are about, hey, the labor force has changed fundamentally, will never be what it was in 1954, no matter how much we hope it is. The consumer expectations have changed and will never go back to 1954, no matter how much we hope it is. The supply chain has evolved and has opportunities for us to build incredibly better shells and interior environments, and you will not be competitive unless you adapt those because they create value. And what I see from our industry systemically is the people running our corporations made their millions of dollars in 1984, and they want to keep doing the things that made them successful in 1984. So at 30,000 feet, ESG is a call that says our industry needs to mitigate those risks in order to be a viable, competitive, individual company in this SIC code in the future. And I will tell you today, the majority of us are not.
So CR and I go back a long ways, and CR's theory and concept and position in the marketplace and his hypotheses around how we can change is why we're here today. So we work together, and CR would conceptualize these ideas and then come into my office and say, I made all these promises, we're going to change the world, and here you go. It's your job to change this. So I was the operations guy instituting the great ideas that CR had at Meritage. So that relationship changed my career. And as we evolved through the Meritage Homes days, I realized over 10 years we were there, when we came out of the downturn, that the home building industry was never going to be the same, and the labor force and the supply chain was never going to be the same, and needed to do something about it. So I formed this company in 2017 when every home builder in the US started to turn profits again and do really, really well, and got really busy. And we said, we're too busy to change, we're too busy to innovate, and we're just going to hope that the supply chain supports us. And I knew that would not happen. So we focused our business around panelization, off-site manufacturing, prefabrication, and alternate building materials. And those four things allowed us to build buildings with less men on site and have a need that's much less than the typical home builder for the supply chain to support us. And it focused around the build-to-rent space, highly repeatable product, reducing complexity in the industry to target the problem that CR just outlined. Look, the supply chain's not going to repair itself. The labor force is not going to repair itself. The only thing we can do as an industry is change the way we operate to react to it. And that's what we're doing, because the current state of the home building industry is not going to allow us to operate the way we did in the boom times in the 2000s. It's not going to allow us to operate the way we did in the downturn. We have to adapt to it. And that's what we're doing. And we're a small fish in a big pond, but we're about to make a really, really big impact by putting thousands of houses that are built differently on the ground and prove that the way we're going about it is truly tackling some of these industry challenges that we have.
Let me drill that one more layer down on that, because I think it's important to seed what we're about to keep talking about, which is, so we know the state of the economy has changed. We know that the existing industry is slow to change and therefore is open to disruption from outside. But what we're really talking about is in a competitive environment, buyers have choices. And the way they choose is very simple. They choose what's best for them. And so as an industry, we need to be focused on what is the value proposition potential for this industry and how will buyers be influenced to make a sophisticated choice. And if an educated buyer or realtor or investor would not choose your product over your competitor's project, look to your left, look to your right, are you positioned to be relevant in the near future? And the honest answer is, there's a lot of people outside of this room that don't take the time to come to these conferences that we compete against that won't be here in 5 years because the way they've approached the value proposition to their buyers isn't as significant as the value proposition of the things you guys have been talking about. And when we introduce that and make that available, make that cost effective, then that resets what good looks like. And choosing something that's more expensive, takes longer to build, is less healthy, consumes more energy, and therefore has higher operating cost, is less durable. All these propositions are really just about value propositions. Yeah, the cheeses move. We don't have the same trades. We have supply chain constraint. There's all sorts of things. But that gives us an excuse to reset, okay, blank piece of paper, what does a great home builder look like? How does that home work? How is it built? Who is it built by? And does that create the highest value proposition of my competition? And if the answer is no, you're in trouble. You need to come to conferences like this and challenge your business strategy.
Thanks, guys. Great start. If I had a dime for every time I heard a builder at a trade show, not one like this, say, it's all in the land buy, I don't care about building the homes, I'd be a rich man, right? That's where the glory is. These guys left comfortable jobs at a major home builder to be more nimble for smaller organizations so they could innovate more, if you permit me saying that.
That's true.
Absolutely true.
And they're innovating in this part of the chain that you guys all deal with every day that's often forgotten. We've ignored a skilled labor shortage for a long time, hoping it would fix itself. And instead, these guys have innovated how they do their business to address those challenges in that core section of the actual building of the home, which is refreshing to me, focusing on this portion of the chain. And these are some of the challenges that you guys laid out as we talked about it, that got you to this, why you're innovating. With the first one being factory-built, offshore competition. I think that was yours, CR. You want to talk about that one?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of when I think about the value chain is two things. Is, you know, have I created the best opportunity for a 36-year-old mom to get the best home they can have per dollar? And who else is chasing that value proposition? And are they ahead or behind of what I'm planning on implementing the next week? And when you look at, you know, if you think about changes, it's either a stick or a carrot. Either there's an opportunity for me to create value and grab market share. There's an opportunity for me to create value and grab premium pricing, or somebody else is going to come in with a better proposition and displace some of my market share or devaluate my pricing. Stick and carrot's the same challenge. And one of the opportunities, and something we've been looking at for over a decade, is in certain constrained markets, innovation happens faster. So you go into Seattle, you go into San Francisco, you go, you know, across the pond and you look at high energy costs in Germany, and you look at what that drives them to. It's a bell cow for where we are going nationally. And so we were one of the first people to look at, you know, advanced thermal envelopes to create airtight, high R. And really, it's about controlling the uncontrolled, right? To reduce uncontrolled thermal gains, uncontrolled moisture gains, uncontrolled air movements. So, you know, high energy sources like Germany started changing the way they build and the codes they build by to create better thermal enclosures. You looked at Asian countries and they used the Toyota quality assurance model and started applying it to houses. And they started going from 10 to 20 to 50-year structural warranties. And the emotional context of the feeling of safety when you have a 50-year warranty that your company's standing by changes buyers' expectations of what a good builder looks like. And so we saw a lot of very good Japanese companies coming in, starting to buy American home builders, starting to buy land positions. We started to seeing Passive House and other European standards come in and start doing stretch goals. And it started showing us, hey, this is what the stretch looks like for best. Are we ready, or are our competitors ready to start achieving that? And we're starting to see the market move. We're starting to see transactions value energy efficiency. We're starting to see appraisal processes differentiate conventional code-built homes from better homes. And so factory processes, and I'll let Mikey talk about, how panelization changes all of the underlying metrics that we lined up under ESG. But these processes just boil down to, it creates an opportunity to create value within the supply chain for our suppliers, for our trades, for our buyers, that is better than the existing strategy. And whether you want to think about it as a stick or a carrot, better than is going to drive the market away from conventional and towards better.
Before I talk about the manufacturing process and offsite panelization, you said something about the Asian companies buying U.S. positions. A little story here in Phoenix market that just recently happened. So there is a Japanese company that owns the biggest framing company in the valley, the biggest electrician in the valley, the biggest plumber in the valley, and the biggest trim carpenter in the valley, and the biggest wood wall panel company in the valley. One Japanese company. They just bought these companies in the last 16 months, all of them. Why? Well, they're going to change our industry. And if we're not ready for that, we're going to be left behind. We're going to be obsolete as a home building industry if we just rely on the old ways we did it. So those are the things that scare the hell out of me as a businessman, and I want to be ready for that. So our whole objective is to be prepared for the next 10-year future. And what does 20 years from now look like? There's a big question mark there. But the way we're doing it is we're trying to solve these problems on the screen, right? We're manufacturing things off-site. We're making wall panels off-site out of better materials that tackle the envelope issues we just talked about. We can produce homes that have a Herro score under 50 without renewables just by building better wall systems. We can produce homes for renters or home buyers that consume less than half of the normal electricity consumption of a U.S. home. That makes a big difference for tenants, and tenants will start to choose us over others, to your point. Are we relevant to the customer? So they're components. You can say, yeah, we're making things off-site, but they also help us comply with this need for changing the way houses work. In addition to that, what it spurs is a new workforce. So the dead hard hats on the table that nobody's wearing and working, right? So we put everybody to work and allow them to build our buildings with lower skill sets and new skill sets that they didn't know they could learn, and give them an opportunity that they might not have on a normal home building track subcontractor base. Right? If you're a 25-year-old kid looking for a job and you want to be a framer, good luck. You're either going to get your butt kicked on a framing crew, or you're going to be pushed aside by the guys that have been framing for a while that say, you can't do it, I can do it faster than you. Well, what we do is we take that same 25-year-old kid and we say, let us show you why we're going to be relevant in 10 years, and the old ways of doing it don't make any sense anymore. And let us show you a new technology and a new skill so you can have an advantage over your friends that you can't get anywhere else. And it's amazing what we see. We can train people in a very short amount of time, give them the skills with basic tools, and let them build structures that make a difference for homeowners or renters or investors, and they didn't even know they could do it. So the tactics we use help us generate a workforce, which allows us to also differentiate in the market to make better homes. So it's not just about picking, doodads and gadgets that do things in the house, like they have shiny lights and chrome plating. It's about truly changing the approach from ground up on how we put the houses together, and it's working.
So you had to bring training in-house, Mike?
We did, and assembly of our structures is in-house. We self-perform several things in the build process. We have in-house workforce, all W-2 employees. We don't rely on piecework labor to assemble our buildings. We control it in-house. And we're able to do that at scale because the learning curve is shorter, right? We've simplified the process on site by pushing the thinking and the technology off-site, right? When we get a kit of parts to assemble a structure and it's all numbered and it goes together like a kit, any of us in this room can put it together with about 4 hours of training. And you know, our panels that we use are about 4 feet wide. So we say you need there's 3 qualifications to work on our crew. You have to be able to count, you have to be able to use a screw gun, and you have to have a wingspan over 48 inches so you can pick up a panel. That's it. Come learn with us. So it works.
You know, I think there's a really important analogy. So I came from outside of the home building industry, and as Mike knows, I was a little horrified. And I love home building, so this isn't to be negative about it. But I came from a process that had Six Sigma, and it had factories, and it had discipline. And I came into an industry that was very much rooted in the 30s, right? It was highly complex, non-repeatable, super custom, high waste factors. And because everybody built that way, it didn't disrupt itself. But the analogy is if you wanted a new car and a truck showed up and it dropped some tires, a roll of leather, a pile of springs, a box of bolts, a block, a roll of carpet, some windows, a screw gun, and a wrench, and said, listen, Giuseppe's gonna be in, he's gonna weld that frame together on Thursday. Next week, Michelle's gonna come in and she's gonna stitch up the leather. The week after that, we're gonna get Carmichael and he's gonna come in and start painting your doors. And in about 6 months, your car will be ready. We're gonna do it right here in your driveway. 1, would we tolerate that? And 2, would we have a lot of confidence in the overall quality you get out of that process? The answer is, of course not. It's the way cars were built at one time, and they lasted about 10,000 miles. And it's the quality of a disciplined, repeatable manufacturing process with some automation and some precision tools, right? Your system has a 1/16 of an inch tolerance. My system has a 1/16 of an inch tolerance. Sticks and bricks in the field, if you're within a couple inches, we did fine. You know, you're gonna remeasure your cabinets on every home you build, even if it's the same floor plan, because you're not sure you hit those internal dimensions. The amount of trips and checks that lack of precision is causing us, we all kind of take for granted. No other industry in the world would tolerate the fly by the seat of your pants, hope for the best, adjust for the worst strategy that home builders have done, because we don't think about one lot being different from the next. It's a custom home, even if we're building the same floor plan. And while that's been wonderful and creative and it allows a lot of ownership, it doesn't create the efficiencies and the value and the durability of every other market segment in the US. If we don't think that's gonna change rapidly to force us to catch up, we are not paying attention. And there's a reason why some cultures with high quality assurance are coming in to disrupt our industry, because they create value that's different than what our customers have had.
So we started with the why here today, why these guys chose to differentiate. If we can go back to the slides. If that stuff doesn't scare the hell out of you, how about an empty Flaming Hot Cheetos display at CVS? I snapped this picture over the weekend. For more proof there's supply chain problems that our economy is facing. So again, they're innovating in this tail end of the chain, and I'm gonna let Mike talk now about what he's doing differently. Go ahead, Mike.
So, like I said, the big driver for us was the structure. Is how do we change the way the structure is built, because it's the biggest dollar component of the home build. It's also the biggest labor demand in the home build. So we tackled that first, and we said, well, we could build out of the same materials that everybody else does, and factory build wood 2x4 wall panels off-site and truck them on a site and stand them on site. And that wasn't good enough because the industry, the framing industry particularly, is really, really fickle when it comes to change, right? And it's not going to adapt quickly at all. So we said, we need to be so different that it feels different on site and feels different for the frame crews. If we're just making 2x4 walls off site and shipping them on site, the reaction we get is, well, we'll just build them on site, it's faster and easier, and that's what we do, and we've done it forever. We're brute force, and we're going to do that, and we're going to kill it, and we're going to knock it out of the park on site. Trust us. And you know what? In 2009, 10, and 11, that was absolutely true. And we tried panelization of wood walls back then. And the framers were so stacked with labor back then, they could do whatever they wanted. And I'll never forget the moment. So this is in 2000, probably 2010. We had aligned with one single framing contractor to do all of our homes. And that was in the downturn in the market, so the volume wasn't high. So we tried to consolidate our workforce, and we said, hey, we're going to panelize our wood walls. And the framer says, why do you want to do that? And at the time it was, well, we want to build the houses faster. We want to execute faster because we're promising to differentiate in a down market. We can build a house faster than anybody else here. We'll deliver your house in 99 days or less. Remember that day? Mm-hmm. So we needed to go fast. And the framer says, we can go faster. Just deliver us a bunk of 2x4s. We'll figure it out. And you know what? He was right. Back then, he could do it. And there was 20 guys on one house, and he was framing houses in 2 days. Now, I'm lucky if I've got 2 framers on one house, because it's the same 20 guys. They're just now on 10 houses. So what's happened is the crew sizes have gone like this. So we said, we don't want to step into that pile of mud again. Let's change it completely. So we went to a concrete wall system. And the picture you see on the screen right now is an ICF, which is one version of a concrete wall system. But we took it one step further. And maybe you can go, yeah. So this is the wall system that we use. We're exploring other wall systems as well, and there's others that do if just as good, if not better, than what you see. What you're seeing is a wall system called Herro. It is an off-site manufactured, panelized, insulated concrete wall. And it functions similar to an ICF, if you're familiar with ICF. It's a concrete structure, reinforced with steel, and it's insulated with EPS foam. So the cool part about this is not only is it off-site manufactured and goes in with a very small crew very, very quickly, it also eliminates steps. So one of the tactics we're using, as opposed to just panelizing with 2x4s, is how do we build things that eliminate downstream steps as well? Because if we have to do less work later in the cycle, that's less men we need, that's less steps, it's less quality points, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It builds quicker, it builds faster, with less opportunity for error. So the wall system is already insulated. So it eliminates the insulation step downstream. It also eliminates 2 inspection points. So we save 2 days just because the inspector doesn't have to check it. It also eliminates a bunch of quality assurance problems that we're having with wood. Because if we don't put that system together correctly, it doesn't fit right. So I always tell my crews, hey, follow the sheet, follow the numbers, put it together like the computer diagram says it's supposed to be put together, and it'll get put together right. If you're putting it together and it doesn't fit, you've done something wrong. Start over. Because the thinking is done in a factory. It's done with really, really smart, tech-savvy designers in Revit, 3D modeled, proven, reproven, tested, and reproven again to be right every time on site. In addition to that, lower labor need, downstream step elimination, it also builds a better wall. The wall is straighter, right? So the thing I hate about wood is that when you put it in the house, 3 weeks later, you got to take it out and put it back in straight again because it's done this on you or bowed or warped, and you constantly have guys touching it and reshaping it and repositioning those walls. These walls will stay straight forever. They're made out of concrete and steel. They're straight as an arrow. And now we have less rework. So, in a nutshell, the strategy is, how do we find products that are made off-site so we can do things on-site while things are being done off-site? How do we find systems that are able to be assembled with less men and less skilled labor? Eliminate downstream steps, eliminate rework, and eliminate inspection points. If we do that with whatever component that is in the house, okay, it doesn't have to stop at wall systems. Whatever component, if we follow that guidance, we will start to tackle the root problem we have right now, right? Labor force, supply chain, and quality assurance. The three biggest things that home builders are struggling with today. And if everybody just turns their cheek and doesn't pay attention to those three things, they're going to get crushed. And we're not going to be there. We're going to be out ahead. We're going to push. We're going to try to transform the industry, whether it be locally or nationally or whatever we can do. And this is how we do it. We just think differently about all the things that go into a house.
And before you flip, I want to talk more about Mike's 24-year-old employee. Is, 1987, you had journeyman carpenters, and you gave them a blueprint. And you said, okay, this is the dimensionality, and this is the way the floor plan lays out. And they executed in the field because they had history and expertise and multi-generations passed down, but they solved the problems in the field. And a lot of times, our contemporary construction managers go out and look around and say, hell, that's how you framed that. Oh, that's how you hit that balloon wall. Oh, that's where you put in your ducts, right? We're depending on our trades to solve that. As we're losing the journeyman plumbers, the journeyman carpenters, and we're re-engaging a new workforce, expecting them to be able to solve your architectural problems in the field as a one-off every time is going to lead you to warranty issues. It's going to lead you to unexpected surprises and some interesting solutions that you don't want in the field. And so by having a Revit model, by having a 3D design, by having something that's precision cut in the factory, what Mike's system and Mike's approach, and certainly my approach, because Mike and I love each other, is creating an opportunity that somebody can come in, create something they're proud of, create something that's high quality, that meets the performance demands of the future, and see that tactile work with their hands, but not have to have the intense knowledge necessary to solve problems in the field. We need to pull those problems back into the engineering and the architecture and the design stage so that we can execute consistently in the field. Same as the car analogy. I don't want somebody delivering an F-150 and parts to my front yard and thinking about how they want to weld this, right? I want that to have been well thought through by an engineer who's going to build 800,000 of them.
Before we move on to CR with his approach, cycle time, cost compared to stick built.
So let's talk about cost first, because it seems to be one of the top focuses of every home builder right now. Costs have gone bananas, right? For anybody who's building houses, Steven's nodding at me. What you thought you could build a house for a year ago, you might as well shred the paper in your shredder and just start over.
A year ago. Not an hour ago.
Yeah, an hour ago.
Phone,
right?
if you haven't looked, your prices went up this morning.
We're seeing just wild cost swings, right? So can you build a house for less dollars by panelizing it off-site? Maybe. In some cases, no. But what you get to do is you get to control your destiny. Now, I can tell you that when wood prices go over $1,000 $1,000, you can build a house out of concrete cheaper than you can out of wood. So cost dynamics change very quickly. But what we get to do is we get to control that by pre-buying all the components ahead of time and controlling the commodity buys so that our investors understand what their costs are and are more confident in their pro formas. Now, the second question is, can you build faster? The answer is absolutely yes, but it depends on how you're measuring it, because home builders who are for sale single lot home builders measure cycle time on a single lot basis. How long does it take for us to build a house on lot 4 at, Hampton Estates? That's how they look at cycle time. And a singular house cycle time will not be much different. It might be incidentally faster, but not enough to really impact the bottom line. But what you can do is you can build more houses at once. So it's not about the singular cycle time, it's about your project cycle time. And you can tackle more houses at the same time because you're building things off-site while you're doing things on-site, and they come to you in trucks and pre-assembled components, and your crews are smaller, so you can spread out on more slabs, you can do more things at once. So we can deliver projects months faster than our competition, which means that's a big deal to our investor community, right? Whether it's for sale or whether it's for rent, especially in for rent, right? If we can put more tenants in houses quicker, that changes the game for our investor customers. So that's where we focus on cycle time. It's not singular, it's holistic, and it's a protection tactic to make sure we don't have the needs that a typical home builder does. We have less need on site.
Thank you. Clear answer, I appreciate it. Let's move on now to CR's approach, slightly different, but a lot of similarities.
A lot of similarities. So I've got to build on Mike's statement because I can't stand it. One of the things that is so interesting, and I think it's kind of implicit in Mike's answer, is that we're not even asking the right questions as an industry. So when you think about direct cost, our answer is no. It's, I'll answer this. It's probably 3 to 5% more in directs. The reality is, if you think about the value proposition, it's a massively better value proposition because we're going to reduce, these shells are rated to have twice the life of conventional 2x4 frame and insulated shells. These have half the operating cost. These have opportunities, I can build a 1,700 square foot home in a day, shell in, dried in with 5 people, right? I can, so I can end up having 5x the productivity per square foot for the same workforce. That enables me to deliver more houses per lot per square foot. So when we think about value, I don't even think we ask the right questions, which doesn't drive the right behaviors from our industry. And so when you look at our approach, it's very similar as to the problem. We need to have a simple, repeatable, high-performance shell that's so much better than the 1,000 things done by 100 people way we've built homes, that it's a compelling value proposition, and then we have to manage change. Building better is still difficult, right? I read history, and there was this whole period of time when cars were displacing horse and buggy, that the horse and buggy industry was so entrenched, everybody just worried about wagon wheel manufacturers and stables and manure removal processes and this old processes that was driving like Chicago, New York. And then we think about it after the change and we look back and we're like, why didn't we just go to better, right? Why are we holding on to so many things that were clearly complicated and expensive and less than? And it's because we were so entrenched in the ideology that we weren't asking the right questions. And so, so these are structural insulated panels. So you can skin them with cementitious boards, you can skin them with orientated strand boards, you can skin them with variable materials, but it's a solid structural material. It spans, in these cases, these are structural insulated panel roofs that have full spans and eliminate truss systems, 4-foot periodicity on design, pre-cut in the factory for very minimal waste, very precision penetrations, easy to assemble. You got to have a 48-inch wingspan and carry a panel, but light panels, 2 houses come on a truckload. We can put, with a sill plate pre-pinned in the slab, 1,700 square feet up in 8 or 9 hours. The envelope is 3 to 5% more. It sets you up at a Herr's mid-40s, pre-installed, stronger, more durable, but you've got a smaller mechanical system. You have a more simplified truss system, right? You've got a ducts into conditioned space. You've got an envelope that's got an ACH 0.8 to it. So you're already meeting these high performance standards that are becoming written into code ahead of time. So it's not disruptive. We're not spending an extra 20 hours trying to get air barriers in and try to get insulation in the right spots and failing inspections. So if you really think about, are you building a better product at less cost for direct cost total? Absolutely. Are you delivering a product with lower maintenance costs, lower operating cost, and higher value to the marketplace? Absolutely. Does the mortgage industry need to evolve to capture it? Yep. Does the MLS need to evolve to differentiate between 1984 construction and 2014 construction? Yep. Does the underwriting have to include the fact that you've got thousands of dollars more in disposable income because you're not giving it to your natural gas company, electrical company? Yep. Right. So that whole value proposition starts with, what's the best house can I build for my 36-year-old mom? How is it going to get built? How is this 24-year-old person coming into the industry going to build? Can I give him a jigsaw puzzle and hope for the best, or can I give him something that I can predictably anticipate a high performance outcome at the end? Now, how do I change the market to do that? In structural insulated panels, Mike's got two pieces which are really, really important. Really good simplistic design for repeatability, really well thought out efficiencies, and in this case, I can compete on costs really effectively in all the markets that we're going to be in, right? So not only is it lightweight, but orientated strand board, polystyrene, polyurethane is commodity pricing, right? I can come in and displace. My only hurdle is changing the hearts and the minds of the crews that used to swing 1,000 pieces to put up a stick construction and get them to put up 56 pieces in panels, right? It's just converting and changing through that management. So the intention behind Bettr Homes is to enable the industry to evolve to just something better for our 36-year-old homeowners. And it's not something we're keeping our arms around. Mike's been very transparent about, hey, this is the right way to go to the market to build high-performance insulated concrete panel homes. I'm super transparent about this is the right way to go to the market to build high-performance structural insulated panel homes. The U.S. Department of Energy says, here's the recipe to build zero-energy homes effectively and easily. All this is almost rear-view mirror stuff. It's just about, okay, this is what great looks like in 10 years, calling back to that ESG strategy. This is the way investors and capital are going to start looking at you to have a broader understanding of value. And Mike's company is really just designed to be the bell cow to say, this is what we have to be to not get displaced by better building from around the globe. If we want to be relevant, if we want to keep doing a job that I love and that I'm proud to do because it creates so much value and human impact to make people's lives better, this is what's necessary. We can't keep doing 1986 construction.
Can I tag on to the wagon wheel analogy?
Love it, please.
So, I came out of big home builder, procurement and having all these big relationships, and we could strong arm companies because we were high volume, yada, yada, yada. So when I started the company and we got our first project, I went to the market with the same approach. I went out to the trade base and said, hey, check out this cool wall system we're going to build with. It's going to change the world. Come build it with me. And the trades went, that's scary. I don't want to do it. And I said, well, wait a minute. We've got a 15-year relationship. We've been building houses together forever. Just change the way you do it and come work with me as a subcontractor. And they said, no, we're getting really busy right now, and our crews are good at what they do, and we're going to stay right here. It was the best thing that happened to me, because on the first project, I signed the GC deal, and I didn't have anybody to put those things together, so we created it ourselves. And I was scared like no other new businessman would be, and thinking, what the heck did I just do? I just got into a place where I can't get the trades to support me. So creating our workforce enabled us to tackle that. And unfortunately for me, or fortunately for me, I had to take on a lot of employees, put in a lot of training, develop a lot of systems in a very short period of time. But it was the best thing we ever did. And that approach, I think, is going to be a necessary approach for a lot of companies, is we're not just going to be able to rely on the wagon wheel anymore. We're going to have to forget about the old procurement processes, forget about the old purchasing methods, forget about the old go-to-market strategies of home builder purchasing departments, and take a different approach. Look, the auto industry doesn't buy things the way home builders do. They have just as many things they have to buy, but home builders rely on a subcontractor base to do everything for them. very few times do they actually go right to the material suppliers. Do they go right to the labor force? Do they develop a labor force in-house? That hardly ever happens in home building. So this new approach is what autos did to the horse and buggy, right? It's a completely different approach that's going to tackle this problem.
One of the great things about it is it creates an impetus for that change. So as we recognize that journeyman carpenters are retiring and they're just not going to be replaced, you know, the natural inclination is how do you just keep this machine running instead of setting the machine aside and saying, okay, that was great, thank you for all that work. We're now going to evolve, right? We're gonna set down our abacus and we're gonna put a calculator on the table. And from that process, I think you're right. I think it sounds scary to think about vertically integrating your company. I mean, I'm vertically integrated from manufacturing to building, and it made all the difference in the world to enable me to execute quickly and to execute with confidence. But the trades piece is gonna be interesting because no matter what, trades will run the success of a company. And whether they're in-house or whether you're just the preferred person that they go to and avoid the more complex, difficult, high labor, high warranty jobs, it needs to be solved. But by having a solution that gives them the optics to rethink about their careers, it allows the conversation. Because if we're just asking them to do the same thing with less people and less training, that wagon wheel will go break.
Right, you have to change the process first.
Yeah.
Let me work in one energy nerd slide, because that's who I am. When I compare the performance of these guys' wall assemblies, building envelopes, to what's become standard in my market, California, 2x6 wood frame R21, there's significant savings to be had. My models show 1 to 2% electricity, 3 to 7% gas savings, and 1 to 8% compliance boost, depending on whether you're building with SIPs or ICFs. SIPs tend to perform a lot better on the compliance standpoint as SIPs, but SIPs have a big advantage over standard as well. And those advantages on energy code compliance turn into dollars for the home builder because it's fewer upgrades they have to put into the house, whether it's a 16 SEER condenser they can avoid, or they can avoid continuous rigid foam on the exterior walls or high performance attics. So all this has value to you, the home builder, on first cost, not to mention the more important value to the home buyer on their utility costs, which can be drastically lower. So we've talked about why they're innovating. We've talked about what they're doing differently. Let's talk about how they accomplish that transition. And we talked in our pre-call about it takes forceful leadership from the top, hence the red ball in a suit, to move the inertia of the way we've always done it, right? How did you guys tackle that in your organizations?
You first.
I've got, let's talk about big organizations and then we'll talk about small organizations. So in big organizations, it tends to be carrot and stick in a different way, which is you need a significant enough shift at a complete national level to create the economies of scale and the consistencies to move the trades, to move the supply chains, to go through the architectural and engineering changes necessary to create that alignment, and it's got to be thou shalt, right? If it's opt-in, nobody opts in for change. In a small organization, it's about can we create market share capture, right? So can we go into a market and be a better value position for our buyers? Can we be a better place to work for our employees? Can we be a better partner for our trades? And so with Bettr Homes, the founder sitting in the back row, we had an opportunity to come in with a better mousetrap and say, okay, let's win hearts and minds and just pull the industry along. And our intentions aren't to build 50 really cool homes for ourselves. Our intention is to pull the industry and enable the trade base and enable the supply chain just to evolve so that the U.S. housing industry is relevant. And so that sort of dedication means that you've got to align with everything from getting architects to design to maximize the efficiency of a panelized approach, working with engineers that can adapt and change to the new way you're handling loads and the new way you're moving stress, working with municipalities, which has been interesting, right? Is they've been rubber stamping 2x4s on 16-inch centers for 50 years, and then you bring them something that's got concrete and steel or OSB and polystyrene, and the brakes get hit, and they want to learn, and they want to look at load tables, and that first permit takes some time, and you better have that built into your change process to that municipal code, and then winning the hearts and the minds of not only your employees, but your trade-based employees, and empowering them not on just the what. It's probably the thing that I think Mike and I line up on the most is the whats don't change the world. It's explaining why we're going to the change, right? Either carrot, you should be proud that you're creating a better product that makes people's quality of life better, or stick, if you put your head in the sand and keep doing this, you will not have a job in 10 years. And so that red ball is about having compelling value proposition. It will always go to that. If you're not going to win in the best product, it doesn't matter how much you fight for it. Enabling change, which is a personal subscription model, right? That you have to win the hearts and the minds of the people that are responsible for the change. And then in the end, making sure that you understand that it is a society that we work within, from landowners to permits to designers to engineers to trades to sales and marketing to close, and everybody has to come along on that journey, right? If you're not telling your story and you're not making it compelling and the people on that chain and that ecosystem aren't subscribing to it, that will be the weak link that prevents that final ball from moving when you strike it on the one end. And so having that holistic approach and executing it, here's why we haven't changed as an industry. There's been amazing ideas and way smarter people than me for 50 years in this space. Those good ideas, if they're not executed, if you don't have a Mikey, which I've been lucky to have for a lot of my career, if you don't have that ability to execute those good ideas, the ball hits that first one and that last ball never moves out, right? So it's about executing by that subscription model, right? Really making sure that people understand why, have the tools for change, and then understand that there's a value proposition that on the other end, it's more secure, it's better, right? If you're not putting them in a place that is a higher value, lower risk at the end of the day, it's not viable change. But the good news is everything we talked about today is just about lower cost, higher durability, better performance, easier to build, right? I mean, there's the only thing that's preventing the entire industry from doing it tomorrow is we got really good at the old way of doing it.
Yeah.
So I got all my gray hairs from the time I started working with CR till now. So I think I blame most of them on you for all this change. For us, it was a little different approach, right? So what CR outlined is the big organization change management process, which is right on the money. And I didn't understand it till we started working together. It was very operational, very tactical, you know, kind of what's in front of me, how do I get it done? And change management is not easy, especially in a big organization. In a smaller organization, it's a little different approach, right? So, you know, in 2017, I was a company of 1, right? Now we're a company of 30, and we've got, you know, 1,500 houses in our pipeline. So very rapid growth, but how did we do it? The first thing is we stayed really, really humble. And the first few, you know, months of operation were very humbling, for sure, especially realizing that I had to form a shell installation company and hire a bunch of people and do it myself. But we stayed humble the whole way. And the other thing we did is we had to show the industry that it's possible. So this industry is very show me, right? Show me and I'll follow. There's a lot of copycatting that happens in the industry, and it's okay. But if you don't show them, it's hard to prove it to them. So we said, okay, we're going to put 150 units on the ground, and we're going to show everybody that it can be done. And we did it. We didn't make any money doing it, just to be clear. We made no money doing it. But that's okay. Because when we had 100 units on the ground, built differently, built better, built more sustainably, and made a difference to the people that were living in them. When we put 100 of them on the ground, we had 1,000 in design. And they're not my projects. They're my customers' projects. So I had to get customers to believe that what we were doing was the right thing to do. And the only way I was able to do that was I had to show them. I had to put those units on the ground, put people in them, and show that that project was successful for the investor owner that was putting the money up for that project. The success story was we had a 150 unit project, and at the final C of O on the final unit, it was 90% occupied. So there was a recognized difference in that project. And right after C of O, shortly thereafter, a month later, it was 100% occupied. That project was then transacted from that owner to another owner at a record sale price for the Phoenix metro area. Why? Well, it was a for-rent project owned by one single investor, and they said, wow, this project is different. It's better. Why are there no stucco cracks on the house? Every other project we looked at, I got to go in and do these repairs, and these units are leaking, and there's mold growing in these houses, and these have sound complaints, and these structures are failing on these projects. How come this project isn't failing? And it was because of the way we built. We just built them better, and we had to prove it to them. And that's how we did it. It was stay humble and show them. And that was our approach.
I think that captures your guys' unique skill sets. Thought leader, operations leader, you took those approaches to driving it through the market.
You know, and I think there's a piece of advice Mike is giving that I think that humble piece, I've always heard it called, don't let good be the enemy of great, which is change is going to be messy. You're not going to be perfect. We are very safe because we have swung hammers on 2x4s for decades and generations, and we're really good at it. And our knowledge about how to fix it and how to repair it and how to manage those materials is deep. And we cut polystyrene with hot wires and weird little fishtail pieces of steel and OSBs with, it looks like some sort of ice cream sandwich coming out there. I mean, it feels different, and we're gonna make a couple mistakes. Is the end goal got better potential than the materials it's displacing? Yes, but you know, there's a piece of this which is because we've gotten so good at it, at the old way of building, there's that, hey, I want to hold on to being almost perfect. And that's where good is the enemy of great. Like, I can't accept being humble and having to learn and having to hire a crew because I could have done it easier that first time. How much easier is it to build the house you're going to build tomorrow than if you went and hired a conventional crew and did framing and took a stick and poked in pink insulation and, you know, and had to deal with finger jointed studs and bows and refurrow out the wall so your drywall is somewhat flat and dealing with the expansion and contraction. And, you know, how much easier is it now, even though it wasn't easy on that first build?
Way easier. Very difficult on the first set.
Right.
And we did make mistakes. And we did have to redo things. And that was okay, right? And we knew that going in that we would be okay on the other side of this because the reasons we were doing it were right.
Right.
And it's now, thankfully, we're already there, right? We've avoided a lot of the supply chain issues that are out there right now. And there's builders that are struggling every day of the week to get everything they need. And our model allows us to, I mean, look, we're not immune, but it allows us to defend against it. And we're buying things easier, and we're buying things with longer lead times better than people can, and we're simplifying our buys, and we're simplifying the build. And it's easier for us to execute houses than the typical stick-built builder.
So, you know, and I make that point just because when you think about what we're asking is we're asking for a little bit of upfront pain to manage the change, to get to a place where you are in a safer place. You're in a place where you have much more control of your supply chain. You have a much higher quality product. You have the opportunity to import new entrants into the workforce that aren't available in conventional, and you can develop a product that's better. And so it's a really compelling position, but the reason the whole industry hasn't jumped in is that first build is a humbling one.
Yeah. Let's do speed round so these guys have a chance to ask some questions. Final slide. how are you converting what you're doing differently into perceived value with your buyer, seller, investor? 2 minutes.
Yeah, so the exact operant word there is perceived. So we learned a long time ago that selling features, which is a traditional way in housing industry, here's your plate height, here's the level of granite you get, here's your trim level, didn't translate into the stuff behind the walls. But the stuff behind the walls, we knew this is what we build for our grandma, this is what we build for our family. So we knew that there was a value proposition, but it wasn't in SEER and MERV and HERS and IoT. It was in, we're going to give you a better investment and the most expensive thing you're going to buy. We're going to create something that has lower maintenance cost, which is why you buy new in the first place, right? You get a new roof and you get the new warranty and you get new construction. We're going to give you something that takes better care of your family because we're going to have low VOC materials and fresh air management and integrated smart thermostats and higher efficiency mechanical systems. And so it became about converting features to benefits. And that was the big learning because we did it really wrong for a couple of years. And I tried to teach people building science. And there's some pictures that I regret about that. But once you transition to, you can have a healthy, comfortable, safe, durable, lower operating costs so you have more disposable income envelope, think about what that does psychologically to the average buyer, average realtor. There are other choices, less comfortable, less healthy, cost more to operate, less secure investment, less durable. So once you start talking about not the features but the benefits, it's really difficult to accept a value proposition because that's the way we started this whole conversation. ESG is about a value proposition. It's difficult to accept a value proposition that doesn't achieve the best. There is 20 houses in every zip code that with the same square footage and the same bedroom count at the similar price range, right? The things people think they're buying, but they're only going to buy one, which is the best value in the way the buyers perceive it, right? It is perceived value, but buyers are becoming smart. HGTV is my best friend, right? It creates a lot of empowered 36-year-old moms out there that don't accept conventional building anymore.
Because we're in the for rent space, our approach follows the same values, but it's a little different tactic to the customer. Our customers are interested in two things. One, how do I get tenants in houses as fast as possible? And two, how do I reduce my operating expenses of this community? And that's what drives their bottom line. So we aligned our sell, if you will, to those things. And it is, hey, we've protected ourselves against the supply chain dynamics. We have found a way to build more things at one time so we can deliver your project faster. And we're using materials and equipment that last longer and won't have the operating expenses of a typical house built out of dead trees and, leaky, drafty walls. So those things, those features, we had to turn into benefits. It's the same concept, but the benefit to our customer is very much investor-driven, but follows the same path as a homeowner, somebody who's buying a home for their family. It's the same, it's a little different, but the same kind of general need, which is build a better house, build it quicker, build it with less defects, and with more durable materials. And so that's how we went to the market, and that's why people are noticing what we're doing, and we had a lot of people calling us for product, and I think I'm going to get a lot of calls because wood just went up again, and here we go, right? It's another ride of how do I get myself some alternate building materials in my project, please? And I think people are going to get a little worn out at the volatility of the normal building products and start to align with better systems and materials.
And these guys have this opportunity before others. Let's open up to questions.
I think we have one. I can't see.
I think you've said twice your target audience is 36 on the age. Mm-hmm. So does that mean that this is really more for not the starter home? This is secondary market?
Yeah, no, let me clarify that. So one of the things that I'm keenly aware of is our buyers aren't sitting in this room, right? We know too much. We're too entrenched in our own business. We know about mortgage rates, and we know about warranty, and we know about drywall cracks, and we know about So that's a reminder to myself that home buying or renting is an emotional process where you have to understand your customers' perceived value proposition. So I'm an entry-level builder. Mike's an entry-level horizontal apartment builder. So it's absolutely targeted at displacing and creating value for the people buying their first homes. These strategies have been in place for luxury homes for 30 years. So Mike and I are both helping kind of take the bottom out where people didn't think that the opportunity to live in, zero energy homes with, Indoor Air Plus certification existed at that entry level. So I think to do our jobs well, we have to tackle the biggest problem, which is entry, because people are so price sensitive, demonstrate at a very large volume, which is nice, that market can evolve and buyers can make a good, sophisticated choice when they're price constrained. And then the rest of the value chain, the move up, the premium, the luxury, that's a no-brainer. Those ones have evolved, especially custom luxuries. Our old CEO had an ICF polyurethane sprayed insulated home before, we even thought about those words for a production building. So yes, I use a 36-year-old mom to remind me about the optics of the emotionality and the families that are being raised in our homes, not to say that this is a move-up product. It's absolutely intended to be a better solution at all the price points, from workforce housing all the way through luxury.
Concrete systems, are they poured in place? The wall panels are poured in place? So how are your mechanicals, electrical, et cetera, run through?
Yeah, so any of the concrete wall systems, whether it's ICF or ICP, insulated concrete panel that you see here, they are stay-in-place forms delivered to the site without concrete. And then reinforcing and concrete is placed on site. The traditional ICF requires a lot of labor, a lot of reinforcing, and a lot of concrete. This system uses the same materials, just does it in a more eloquent way, and uses less on-site fabrication. So we only have to place one single number 4 rebar at the top bond beam, and then we place concrete in the wall system, which on the side, you can see the picture on the right, that's the placement process. Very simple. Line pump concrete, top plate placement, consolidates through the wall. Very, very simple application. So there aren't many wall systems that are pre-cast because they're heavy and hard to transport. So you'll see this cast in place process in all insulated panels like this.
But the rest of that answer is both the panelized concrete and the structural insulated panels are normally chased. So you can punch a hole at the plate level, at the plug level, drop your 110 in and pull it through the back of the walls behind the structure into the insulation. You hot knife it, right? So you can directly drywall against these panels. You can directly stucco. You can directly finish the exteriors. There'll be cases where you'll fur out for plumbing chases. You'll drop the nice thing about SIPs is full span roofs. You get a nice cathedralized roofing system, which reads a little bit more elegantly, but we'll drop a ceiling over a secondary bedroom to tuck the mechanicals in and run your ducts in. So you'll fur out just because you've got a very airtight, watertight thermal shell. You'll run electric in the walls, but everything else you tend to bump around and put inside your internal framing.
Yeah, you can see that core is just the center. There's 2.5 inches of foam on each side of the concrete that you can work in to put Romex and PEX pipes and those types of things very easily.
Well, I am fired up. I don't know about you guys.